It's 2025 season preview time for the Melbourne Demons. Stick around and enjoy. Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. We've got another club preview for 2025 coming your way. It's the 2025 season preview of the Melbourne Demons coming your way today. We're going to be having a look at everything there is to know about Melbourne coming up, where they've been the last few years. I look at their list, I look at their depth chart, I look at their best 22, and a small little look at their schedule ahead at the end of the episode. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We're doing this for every club. This is well past halfway now. We're up to Melbourne. We're going alphabetically in through the clubs, so there's still like 7 or so to go after this one. So check them all out on the YouTube channel. Don't forget there's also a podcast. But without any further ado, let's jump into Melbourne Demons 2025 season, and we're going to start with how they went last year. They finished 14th on the ladder, 11 and 12 for the season. So not a great season from them, in all honesty. It was a season where things started quite positively for them. They played in opening round and lost that one, but then they started to really get the ball going, I guess. Through the early parts of the season, you look at rounds, I think it was 3 and 4. They played back-to-back weeks in Adelaide. They beat Adelaide. They beat Port Adelaide, in the first one. And then backed it up the next week in Gather Round and beat Adelaide in Gather Round. So 2 weeks in a row they won over in South Australia, which was huge for them. Made it look like they were going to be once again quite competitive through the season, but due to injuries, due to some lack of form from some other players, they just drifted out of the season in the end, only winning 11 games. Missing the 8 by a couple, 2 games plus percentage. So a bit of a disappointing season, I guess, from where they had been the previous few years. They had finished top 3 in the home and away season the previous 3 years before that. But plenty of excuses on there along the board. You look at Petrarca missing the second half of the year. Players like Clayton Oliver not quite being at the level they had previously been. Just a whole bunch of stuff. But in the end, they missed finals. They dropped quite a few spots late in the season. So we'll now check out their last 5 years, starting in 2020. Obviously, COVID-affected year, that one. They just missed finals, going 9 and 8, 9th on the ladder. So, I mean, not a terrible season from them. One that you can certainly forgive. They backed that up in 2021, which was another COVID kind of affected year, but still got a full season basically. 17 wins, 4 losses and a draw. Finished first on the ladder. Went on to win the premiership in outstanding fashion. Over in the West against the Bulldogs. That was an outstanding season. What has happened since then, though, is interesting, to say the least. They've played 4 finals since that time and not won any of them. They finished second on the ladder in 2022, 16 and 6, which was a pretty solid home and away season again, but went out in straight sets, which was disappointing for them. And then 2023, they finished 4th on the ladder, went 16 and 7, so a very similar record again. But once again, went out in straight sets and finished 6th, though. So 2 seasons in a row finishing up in a semi-final loss. And since that premiership, they've gone 0-4 in finals. They did get that premiership, though, so, I mean, better than most teams in that period. But just a little bit disappointing, I guess. So they've dropped off now to 14th. Last season, they need to find a way to quick bounce it. Whether they'll be able to do that this year or not. Look, it wouldn't surprise me if they could. We'll get into that a bit more as this episode progresses, but it would not surprise me to see them bounce back up into the top 4. We'll jump now into their depth chart, starting in the key defenders. But before we do that, just a little explanation, I guess, for the colours and whatnot here. So blue players are elite as my rankings. So all the position rankings are mine that I did for every single player last year that played a game. Blue means they were in the top 10%. Green means they were in the top 50%. Yellow means that everybody else. Red is players that haven't played AFL football before. And then the final colour is orange. I don't think there is any orange for Melbourne. But there are players that didn't play last year but have previously played AFL football. So yes, that's pretty much sums up the colours. We'll start in the key defence line. They have three pretty solid players here. Tom McDonald, Stephen May, Jake Lever. They will be their starting three big men pretty much all season long, you'd imagine, unless they have injuries, and then they might have to start moving things around. Because I'm not 100% convinced Jed Adams will be ready to go this year, but maybe blood him a little bit, who knows. 17th, 21st and 30th best key defenders last year, they all underperformed, in all honesty. Tom McDonald, probably, that's about his level. But Stephen May and Jake Lever, at their best, are certainly better than that. And two players that could potentially, with things going right, move back into that elite range where they have previously been. So I just see those two players as two players that definitely could be higher ranked than they were last year. Jump into the general defenders. This is kind of where maybe they're lacking a little bit of that class of some of the other teams. Where they find that, I'm not sure. They've got Trent Rivers, Judd McPhee and Christian Salem, who were all in the top 50% of general defenders last year. None of them elite range though, 27th, 45th and 50th. The next batch of players, I guess, are all young players. Jake Bowie, Blake Howes, Tajwo Woden, Marty Hoare and Andy Moniz Wakefield. They need a couple of them to really step up. In all honesty, probably need someone to move into elite range general defender wise. I'm not sure who the most likely of them is. Judd McPhee shows a bit of promise. I'm quite excited about the prospect of him. Some of these younger players could potentially move into the above average range in Bowie, Howes, Moniz Wakefield, Marty Hoare. Someone like that might step it up. But that at the moment is one of their major concerns across the board, I think, is the lack of depth, I guess, from their general defenders last year in terms of class, and where they're going to find that prospect for 2025 in comparison to other teams. I just don't think they quite have that class. They certainly have a lot of players in that range that are quite young. So with experience, with development, they may just shoot out of the ground this year, one of them or two of them, and become really, really good general defenders. But as of yet, we're yet to see that from some of these younger ones. Moving into the key forward line, we've got a couple prospects here. Bailey Fritsch obviously has been there for a while. He was ranked 16th as a key forward last year. He's pretty short for a key forward, but I mean, that's how he plays. He leads up forward. He's not a one-on-one contested marker, but he's that lead up forward for them. He's had a lot of success over the years. He kicked 6 goals in a grand final. He's someone that can certainly kick a lot of goals. He's very accurate kick most of the time. And you know what you're going to get from him. He's not the most elite defensive minded forward at times, but when he's kicking goals, it's usually a good sign for Melbourne. Jacob Van Rooyen, he's someone that is consistent. He plays his role, but I just don't think he's ever much higher than where he was last year. Same with Harrison Petty. I don't know if he's ever going to be an above average key forward. Daniel Turner has shown some prospects that perhaps he could be that second key forward for them, the more contested forward for Melbourne. I think that's probably their big hope of going the next step in their key forward line. Don't know too much about their 3 players that haven't played as a key forward in Aiden Johnson, Jefferson, and Kentfield. But I think in an ideal world for them, Bailey Fritsch and maybe Daniel Turner was probably their main two key forwards, with the prospect of maybe a Jacob Van Rooyen as their third tall up there if they wanted to go with three talls. Next up, we're going to the general forwards. This is one of only two elite players that they had on their list from last year. Doesn't mean that they're the only two actual elite players. We'll get to their midfielders in a minute, which I think certainly has players certainly capable and previously capable. But Kozzy Pickett, outstanding season last year. He needs to stay on the park. He needs to stop getting suspended. But he can be absolutely one of the most damaging players that plays that half forward / midfield role. He very damaging as an attacking player. If he's got space, it's good night. His pressure's really good. When he goes in the midfield, like in the centre bounces, he does really quite well in that as well. So I think he's someone that, as a burst player through the midfield, but then also going forward and kicking goals, is going to be someone that could be one of the most elite players in the competition in my eyes. Based on what we saw last year, he can be an absolute menace for any opposition player. So he was their best general forward last year. He was also probably one of their best midfielders while he was in there. So look for a big year from him. Kay Chandler had a solid year as a general forward. He wasn't outstanding, but he got the job done. There's a lot of yellow on this list and also in this position. Tholsthorpe, I think, has potential to step it up a bit from what we've seen so far. Billings and Melksham, their best previously, would certainly be higher than this. Billings is probably the one they're looking for the most improvement. I think Melksham's more of a role player at this point of his career, but Billings, I think, still could potentially get up into that green area. Bailey Laurie and Spargo, as well as McAdam, they're all capable if they get game time, show development. Bailey Laurie probably the most likely, maybe Spargo. And then Mentha and Sesteen as the two players that haven't played yet. Moving into the midfield lineup for the Demons, they have quite a lot of talent. They obviously, they feel like they're probably one dominant inside midfielder short, which is probably the early retirement of Brayshaw, in all honesty. They certainly miss him. There's no doubt about that. Certainly missed him last year. Whether they can plug that hole this year, we'll see. But they've still got some absolute class in there. Christian Petrarca would have been an elite midfielder last year had he not missed the whole second half of the year. Still an outstanding year to be ranked 18th. Jack Viney is someone that's always going to be in that above average category. You feel he's certainly still well and truly good enough to be in that above average category. Clayton Oliver's the big one, I think, for the Demons this year. At his best, 2021, 2022, he was an absolute elite midfielder. He missed half of 22, and then obviously he played every game, I think, last year, or almost every game. But he wasn't fit at the start of the year. He wasn't at his normal damaging best. If he can get back to that sort of form, that would be huge for him and for Melbourne. So two midfielders there that I think certainly should be in that elite range in Petrarca and Oliver. Viney, Langdon, both in that next category. And then they need at least one more to step up into that above average range. And they've got options there, I guess, in Sparrow, Windsor, Sharp. Brown we haven't seen much of. Langford and Lindsay, they both were drafted to be good midfielders pretty early in their careers, I would imagine, especially Langford, I think. So potentially by the end of this year, they could both be into their midfield lineup and pushing towards, I mean, first-year players very rarely are going to go into the above-average category first year. So probably won't see that this year, but we'll see game time from them. And if other players are stepping up, then it will allow these guys to come in and play a role and develop into players that will potentially be into that above average range in 2026 or 2027, which is what they're going to need. Because, I mean, Petrarca and Oliver still have a couple years left in them each, like a few years between them. But pretty much their three best midfielders are all approaching the last few years of their career. As is their ruckman in Max Gawn, who's obviously elite. He was my number one ranked ruckman last season. Another outstanding year from him. I think he's 7-time All-Australian now. He's an absolute gun. There's not much he can't do as a ruckman. He can kick goals when needed. He's good in the ruck. He's good around the ground. So he's not quite the modern age ruckman that some of these ones that are coming through that are big bodies. They get the ball and they barge it forward in whatever way they can. He's still a little bit more of that last generation Dean Cox type player. Tom Campbell, he's a role player. He won't be playing at all, I don't think, unless Gawn gets injured or misses a few games. I don't think we'll see Tom Campbell. And then I guess Fullerton and Varel are both players that they're just trying to develop because they're going to need someone to replace Max Gawn in a couple of years. So it's the point in time now where they need to be finding that next ruckman for them, because ruckmen don't usually hit their peak until they're 25, 26. So you're not going to get that ready-made ruckman straight in unless you bring someone in from another team. So that's, I guess, where this Melbourne team is at the moment. They still have enough top-end talent, I think, to give it another crack. But if this year is a bust, then maybe they need to find another way, whether that's they go to the trade table or in the free agency market, or they go back to the drawing board and stock up on draft picks like a Richmond has. Certainly with the prospect that Pickett is likely to leave at the end of 2025, will have an effect on that. Most people consider him going. Most pundits reckon he's going to Fremantle, which, I mean, I think is a likely outcome. However, Fremantle also want to bring in players like Chad Warner. How can they fit all these players into their team? It will be interesting because they've already got a stacked midfield. Adding in Chad Warner and Pickett as well, they're not going to be able to hold everyone. They're not going to be able to give games to everyone. So it will be interesting, but on the case of Melbourne for now, I think Pickett, I mean, he's going to be there all this year. So hypothetically, Melbourne give it an absolute crack this season. Hope that he really enjoys his football and wants to stay in Melbourne, basically. They've got a year to try and give him reason to stay. We'll now jump into their best 22. This was their best 22 I did a couple weeks ago, so it's a little bit outdated now, but I mean it's still fairly accurate to what I think. Obviously, this is before any pre-season games. We haven't seen their scratch match yet. We haven't seen their pre-season fixture yet. But we'll start in their back line as we went through before. Tom McDonald, Stephen May, both key defenders that are well and truly above the average key defender, so would get games anywhere, basically. Christian Salem is capable as to be their best general defender. He wasn't last year, but he's capable. Their half-back line, Trent Rivers, Jake Lever, and Judd McPhee. I think that's their best six defenders, full stop. They're not going to necessarily line up in those exact positions, but I think they are their best six defenders based on last year, certainly. Whether some of these other ones can step up and move into that role, potentially. There's certainly some good young talent there that could step up, so we'll see how those roles get filled throughout the year. Midfield line, Tom Sparrow, Viney and Windsor. Sparrow and Windsor both midfielders that probably need to take that next step in 2025. Otherwise, they're going to be in danger, I guess, of keeping a spot on this list. The players below them in Sharp and Brown, a bit younger and less experienced, I guess, that they've probably got some time to keep developing, whereas Sparrow and Windsor, you feel like they should be getting towards the time now where they start stepping up. Half forward line, as I said, Pickett will rotate through forward and midfield and be one of the most damaging players in both of those areas while he's doing it. Daniel Turner, I think, is their best prospect as a tall forward. Billings, as we mentioned before, he's still at that age where he should have another year or two to really progress. Bailey Fritsch as that lead up forward. Jacob Van Rooyen, I think, will play most games. Cade Chandler was outstanding last year. I think he's definitely in their best 22. Follower line, I mean, this is a walk in the park. Max Gorn, Christian Petrarca and Clayton Oliver, 3 absolute guns. 3 players that are capable of being elite this year. Interchange, this is where it gets interesting because everyone on this interchange bench, plus the emergency list and plus a couple others, there's a lot of players around that range where it's hard to know exactly who's in their best and who's not. Outside of Ed Langdon, who's certainly definitely in their best 22, there's a lot of players fighting for those final spots, I think, in this Melbourne team. A lot more than perhaps in some of these other teams that we've gone through so far. But I've got Bowie, Langdon, Tholsthorpe and Mona's Wakefield as, at the moment, the bench interchange. But then any one of these next 6 could certainly step up in Hoare, Sharp. I mean, we've seen what Melksham is. He will play games. I don't think he's in their best 22. Langford and Lindsay are the two I guess, crucial ones that we don't know as much about. But I think they will both get a go in the seniors this year. Whether they're good enough to make a spot in the best 22 this year or not, I don't know. I think 2026, they definitely will be pushing towards that. And then Blake Howes as well. We've seen a bit of him. I think he's probably that one person that could go into that halfback flank role and step up as well. So we'll see a bit of him as well. And then there's a few that didn't even make it that certainly could step up. Your Spargos, your Laurie, your Woden, your Hoare. Players like that could step up and get game time this year. As I've said, that's my best 22. Certainly jump in the comments and let me know if I missed anyone or I've put someone in that you don't think should be in there. Let me know. And then final thing we're going to have a look at is a quick little snapshot of their season ahead. Their first game will be in round 1 against GWS at the MCG. Huge game. They obviously don't play an opening round this year, which I think they're pretty happy about, in all honesty. GWS at the MCG, though, will be an absolute cracking first game. They came out last year and lost opening round, but then round 1 came up against the Bulldogs and thrashed them at the MCG. So they'll be hoping to do that. Obviously, GWS will be coming off an opening round game against Collingwood, so they'll have the miles in the legs. But it will be a huge game for Melbourne. If they can get a win there and get their season really going with a great start, that will be huge. Their buys, obviously, opening round they don't play, and then they have a bye in round 15. Gather round will be another big game for them. The Bombers at Adelaide Oval. They played the Bombers in the wet at the MCG late last year and got the win. So they have maybe the wood over them at the moment. Adelaide Oval will be a different prospect for both teams, in all honesty. It will be an interesting matchup, to say the least. That one, teams that they played twice in 2025 are Collingwood, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, North Melbourne, St Kilda and West Coast. That is a pretty juicy list of teams to be playing twice, in all honesty. Only one team there played finals last year, and that was Hawthorn. So that is a hard team to come up against twice. but the rest of them did not play finals. Collingwood just missed, and debatable what people think, whether they will be good this year again. Gold Coast didn't play finals last year. North Melbourne and West Coast were two of the bottom three teams. And then St Kilda was bottom 4 or 5 most of the year. They won a couple games late in the year to jump above Melbourne. But this is one of the easier draws in the competition. So there's no excuses on that front for Melbourne. I know the competition's very tight at the moment and there's no such thing as an easy draw. But this is not the toughest draw by any stretch of the imagination. They don't play any team that finished in the top 4 last year. They only play Hawthorn that played finals last year. As far as tough draws, they've got no excuses here. So if they can get players like Clayton Oliver back to their best, they're a chance. There's no doubt about it. Jump down in the comments below and let me know where you think Melbourne will finish this year. I've got them as a sneaky chance to get back into finals. I'll do a season preview next week, I think it is, for the podcast. And they probably won't be in the 8 when I do that. But they are a team here that if they can get everything going right and some of these young players step up, they are a team that can be in that range. Having said that, they are one of the lower amount of above average players from last season. So we'll see. I don't think they will play finals this year, but don't write them off, is what I'm saying. If you're a Melbourne fan, have belief, because you never know, and this could be a team that bounces back. Don't forget to like it. Hit that subscribe button. We're slowly growing. I'd like to keep growing, so hit that button. We'll be back. There's another episode tomorrow. We'll be doing North Melbourne. Podcast is out on Wednesday, so check that out. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jay. This was the Demons. I'll catch you on the next one.